If you're experiencing any type of ongoing chronic emotional pain, stress, anxiety, depression, this video is absolutely going to be for you, especially if you don't know what the cause of it is. Hi, my name is Ty Hicks. I do mental health coaching for people, help them improve their mental health, usually by about 75% or more in 90 days or less, using a conditioning-based approach. I was suicidal, and therapy and medication and coping mechanisms didn't really work well for me, but I figured out how to train my brain, and that's worked incredibly well. Been depression-free for over 16 years. So I make these videos because I want you to have the mental health you deserve, and you can. You just got to learn the skills necessary to acquire it. So today I'm going to cover for you something very, very powerful. I'm always looking for what is the type of information that can give people the fastest results in the shortest amount of time and distill it into simple frameworks so that you can use it and take it with you in your regular life. And today I wanted to share with you three key things. This is not, I'm going to present it to you in the format where I didn't discover this particular format, although I discovered this and I realized, oh my gosh, this really coincides with so many of the things that I teach, but I really love the way that this person has put it. And so this comes from a gentleman named Albert Ellis. And Albert Ellis was one of the initial sort of essential pioneers or founders of what's called CBT, or cognitive behavioral therapy. Unfortunately, today, most therapists in therapy who claim to be doing CBT are not really sticking to the actual essence of CBT, right? CBT has now kind of become a bit bastardized and become kind of like a catch-all term for just regular talk therapy, where you're in a therapeutic environment talking about your feelings, being listened to, and you're not really being given a whole lot of direction. There's increasingly smaller and smaller number of very practical CBT therapists out there who really teach and help people master the skills that CBT teaches. But CBT in its truest, purest form is actually very valuable in a lot of cases. And I think this little explanation will help you understand why. So firstly, think about whatever emotion you feel on a regular basis that you don't want to be feeling. You know, maybe it's stress, anxiety, depression, sadness, right? Whatever it is, anger, maybe. Those are kind of the top 5, I would say. And what Albert Ellis discovered after working with so many people is he realized that there were only so many causes of those particular emotions. In fact, what he realized is that there were essentially 3 main mental distortions that we make. Okay, distortion simply means we change the meaning of something. So input comes into us from the outside world, like raw input, and then we put a meaning on that input, right? And the meaning that we put on the input can cause us either pain or joy, depending on the meaning that we do. And what he realized is that there are really only 3 types of distortions that we make that causes pain. So if you can identify which ones are the most common for you, and you can start to build a habit of no longer making that particular distortion, but instead doing something that creates an empowering meaning for yourself, then you can dramatically reduce and or eliminate emotional pain, chronic emotional pain, I should say. And so these are the 3 main distortions, and we'll take each one in turn. The first one is circumstances. So the sort of general template form of this is, if things don't go how I want, I cannot stand it. That's kind of the basic idea. And so you can see how there's about 1 million different permutations that could take place. But chances are, if you're feeling frustrated, angry, whatever it is, there is some type of a circumstance in your life. There's something that's not going how you want it to go. And the distortion that you're making in the mind is, I can't stand the way it currently is if it's not going how I want it. Now, of course, this is a fiction, right? There are tons, I would say the vast majority of human experience, save for a couple situations, say like if we're being physically hurt, right? Or, harmed physically, as an obvious example, we are capable of being able to tolerate a whole lot more than we tell ourselves that we're able to tolerate. Now, there's a whole nother question on that of whether you should tolerate certain things or not, and that's a subject for a different video, I think. But If I just take like a simple example that I know stresses a lot of people out, one of the common ones that would be that almost anyone could relate to is the idea of like having to do certain things during the day, right? Like needing to exercise or do work or respond to emails or, whatever the case is. A lot of people get very frustrated and upset about things that they have to do. And so the little distortion we're making there is, I don't want to do this, and because I need to do this, I can't stand it. It bothers me. And just that little distortion that we make makes the whole experience 10 times worse than it really has to be, right? If we get rid of that distortion and just say, yeah, this is a thing I need to do, I'm going to do it regardless, there we go, right? And then the distortion is no longer there. The pain is no longer there. Pain only exists when we have the meaning there that we cannot cope with how reality is presenting itself to us in that moment. So when our expectations mismatch with our reality, then that's when we have pain. So when we create an expectation of, I shouldn't have to do this, or this isn't how it's supposed to be, there's now an imbalance between reality and our expectations. That imbalance, that gap between the imbalance, is what creates pain. If we have a tiny mismatch in our expectations and reality, we have a tiny amount of pain. If we have a massive mismatch between expectations and reality, then we have a huge amount of pain, right? So that was the first one, having distortions about circumstances and claiming that because a circumstance is a particular way, we can't stand it. Okay, the second type of distortion has to do with other people. And it's pretty much the same idea, right? So the distortion here is, other people need to do what I expect them to do, or else I cannot stand it, right? And so you can see how that I'm guaranteed that distortion you're applying to at least one or more people in your life, somewhere, somehow. Coworkers, spouse, children, right? Whatever it is. And again, mismatch between this fundamental law of the human nervous system, which is, if we have a mismatch between expectations and reality, we'll have pain. So if reality is somebody is doing a particular thing, they're saying something a certain way, they're acting a certain way, and our expectations are they should not be doing that, so there's a mismatch, we have emotional pain. If we have a huge difference, if we have a distortion or an expectation that they should be doing something radically different than what they're doing, then we're going to have a lot of emotional pain. Okay, now in the realm of relationships, there are some times where the appropriate thing is to change the circumstances and not the expectation. Like a very obvious example would be if you are in a relationship with someone who's physically harming you. I'm not saying just modify your expectation and be okay with them hitting you. Of course not, right? So sometimes you do need to change your actual circumstances, and that's definitely true. But I'm sharing this with you because most people are having more emotional pain in their life, not because of their life circumstances. It's because of the mental distortions they're making about their life circumstances. But both can be balanced. So sometimes changing the circumstance to match the expectation will solve the issue. And that is the right thing to do, especially if it's within your power. Like, for example, maybe you know that there are actions you could be taking to better position yourself for your next promotion at work, but you're not doing that, right? But meanwhile, you're getting upset with an expectation that you haven't already been promoted. Well, that would be a clear example where you either need to change the distortion and say, you know what, I'm comfortable with the amount of effort I'm putting in, and I'm comfortable with the amount of compensation I'm getting for the effort I'm putting in. It's not enough for me to just wish I had a promotion, because I have to demonstrate sufficient value to my employer in order to justify them giving it to me. So you could either change your distortions, or you could change your circumstances and say, no, I absolutely do expect to get this promotion, but I'm not going to just wish for it to happen. I'm going to take power in my own hands and do what I need to do in order to make that happen. Okay? So that's the second one, is distortion of other people, right? And claiming that other people must meet our expectations all the time. And then the third one is distortions of self. And these are probably the most powerful ones. And so a distortion of self is, if I did a bad thing, I am a bad person, right? So the fundamental distortion there is, because of a particular event, because of a choice I made, because of something that happened to me, I am now going to no longer define that as this isolated event is the problem, but rather I, as an individual, my identity, my whole being is the problem. Right? And this is a very, very common one, particularly for people who are feeling depressed or very severe anxiety, because a common one with depression is the idea of like, I'm a failure, I can't succeed, something along those lines, I'm unlovable. And then with anxiety, heightened anxiety, those tend to come from things of like, I'm not pleasing people at the level I need to, and it's my responsibility to do so, or I'm not as perfect as I need to be. Right? So again, it's a big distortion of self. So what I would really love to hear from you in the comments maybe is which of these three tends to be your biggest one? Do you tend to curse your circumstances more? Do you tend to curse other people more? Or do you tend to curse yourself more? Right? Because isolating what your big mental habits are can help you start to see which ones you need to change. And that can be a really good, helpful way to do that. So I'd love to see your comments there. Please engage with this video. Every engagement helps people who are in need of mental health help to be able to see it. So it's a way you can pay things forward. And I'll be excited to see you and serve you in the next video. I hope this was helpful to you. Take care.